People need to go through a process of adjusting their relationship with the future, which really is about your relationship with risk. So when you're in a regular career, working 5 days a week, the risk for the future tends to be pretty minimal. As long as you stay in your job and you keep doing what you're doing, and as long as you're not like getting worse in your performance, you can basically stay as long as you want. And so the future is very certain in that kind of situation. And once you become a freelancer and you're working for yourself, all those things that are certain that were set up for you in your work environment are basically gone. And you start to experience a lot more risk when you think about the future or the choices that you're going to make. And it's important to be more flexible, basically. Like you can't just keep doing the same thing every day. Like you have to spend some time or leave some room in your mind to think about what could happen, kind of like almost like predicting the future or trying to plan your next steps based on what could happen. And so that kind of thinking exercise might be unfamiliar for a lot of people. Or maybe you used to have that ability, but because of the way that you've gone through your job, you kind of lost your experience with that.
Hmm.
Especially if you're in a kind of job that is very repetitive and predictable. So that's the first idea, starting to accept that the future is going to become more uncertain, but at the same time, there are things that you can do in your planning and in your decision making that can be successful with like engaging with that and creating the results that you want.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to it. There is, like you said, the future vision of it all. Like it may not be a path that you've been down before. Usually it's not, especially if this is your first business and this is a new field. So it's like partly it's kind of like tough to visualize that when you've been told what to do in the past and now you get to decide what it is. But then the other part of it is like trusting yourself that you're going to be able to figure it out and handle it and take the steps in the right direction. Because, having a coach or a mentor or somebody kind of guiding you is one thing, but if you feel like the responsibility is on you, which it is, like that can be quite a daunting prospect of like, oh, now it's on me to make sure that it works. And I think that shift in mindset is really what someone is going through in that situation.
Yeah, you start to understand how much responsibility that you're going to have, that like whatever happens, both the good and the bad outcomes will be partly your responsibility. And the input that you put into your work is going to have a very direct relationship with what happens. And so that's one of the areas where risk can come in as well, which is when I make the choices for my work or for my business, there's always a chance that it won't work out or something else will happen where it doesn't happen the way that I wanted it to or I don't get the results that I want. And the risk of failing is always going to be there.
Yeah, and one of the ways that I've been able to overcome that and kind of I don't think it's ever something that you just fully can do and not take things personally ever, but there are a few things that I've put into practice that have helped me make huge improvements in those areas. One of them is to focus on the process and the actions that I'm taking as opposed to the outcomes that I'm getting. So if I have a strategy for how I'm going to find clients, or I have an approach that I'm taking in how I'm delivering projects, or how I'm doing my proposals or something like that. And I sort of set some goals for myself and in terms of outreach, or, how quickly I get things done, or just the way that I'm doing things. If I meet those targets, then I can sort of step back and then see what result came of that. Is that something that I want to continue with? Am I going to tweak it? Am I going to change it? Am I going to drop it entirely? And it helps me be a bit more objective about it, because if you focus on just the result, there isn't always a direct association between like, I did this thing and then this happened. Sometimes you can be doing so much outreach and networking and marketing for weeks and then nothing happens. And then all of a sudden you get like 5 leads at once. And so, I think trying to find those direct associations is not necessarily helpful because you're not always going to see them, or they're not even there. And that way you have more of a tendency to blame yourself when things don't work out the way you want them to, because it's better to focus on the actions that you're taking and making sure those are aligned with your values, your brand, the vision you have for your business, and just seeing it as an iterative process that you work on over time because you don't know everything going in. Like you haven't done it before. So there has to be a process of figuring it out in real time. And you can't be too hard on yourself for that.
Yeah. And one of the things that is actually helpful about working on your own, or it's an opportunity to practice, which is that you don't have people around you necessarily who can tell you that you did something wrong or that you messed up. The process is all happening inside yourself in your own thoughts. So, in a way, that actually can make things easier if the pressure that you feel is more related to like somebody's going to find out. Actually, nobody would find out some of the time. Like if you're living by yourself and you spill your drink and you clean it up, nobody needs to know that that happened. You just deal with it because it happened and you fix the situation, and then you can feel better about that. You can feel good that I did something about it in that situation. So a lot of times when you're working on your own, one of the things that people describe is feeling free from like oversight or supervision from other people. So it could be your
Mhm.
boss, or even like further in the past, it could have been your parents. And like the way that I think the way that your parents gave you feedback about your behavior really translates a lot to how you feel when people give you feedback in a professional setting. So once you're on your own, you are kind of free from those kinds of external sources of feedback, and you can just keep it all to yourself. Especially if you're good at internal processing already, then you actually have more room to be more productive with your processing. So like if you just came out of a situation and you're kind of debriefing with yourself, you don't necessarily have to listen to someone else tell you what they think, and then try to figure out if that's helpful for you or not. And so you kind of have to build up a your own sense or your own intuition about what kind of thoughts or what kind of reactions are helpful. You know, if you react very negatively, generally that's not productive, but over time you'll learn that through trial and error, like how you should react to things. And sometimes in our old jobs, what we learn about how to react to a situation or how big or small a problem is really based on what other people are telling you, or other people are teaching you their standards of how to react or how to respond to problems. So it's an opportunity for you to build that up for yourself because the business is your own. And so you can make your own standards of what matters to you or what you should focus on.